liturgy.
We set up the bunks, or we put the tables together for meals, and we had people bring meals. And if we could do it every night, that would be the best thing. But we do what we can do.
CFCU is 35 different faith communities in the Denver area working together to try and slow down gun violence.
I don't see them anywhere. I wonder where they could have gone.
Hi, we're the garden team from First Congregational UCC Church in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I'm Nick Pence.
I'm Milton Stewart.
John Nobling.
And we love to work in our garden. We've been doing this we've had the garden for about 6 or 7 years. The produce we work with is donated to IAM, which is a local food bank, and they're very appreciative, and it's been a wonderful endeavor, and we've certainly enjoyed it.
My name is Melissa Mellum. I was the solar project lead here at First Congregational United Church of Christ in Hendersonville, North Carolina. This project really was a community project of the congregational community and for the larger community of God's great evolutionary creation. Taking action and stimulating interest in reducing our carbon footprint addresses the protection of all of creation, including the many human communities, often the most socially and economically disadvantaged human communities that are adversely affected by global warming. This project took place over the course of 2 years, and it was funded entirely by donations from our congregation. It consists of 60 photovoltaic panels and provides about half of the electricity needed by the church annually.
Hello, I'm Gary Seifers. I'm a member of First Congregational United Church of Christ in Hendersonville, North Carolina. We've always been a very active social justice congregation, but after last year's presidential election, we knew we needed to do much more to more boldly state what we stand for. We decided to do that by focusing on 3 of our core values. What we decided to do was to translate those values into the banner above. We wanted to boldly declare our solidarity with people who were being threatened by the current administration. Those include our Muslim and undocumented neighbors, our LGBT neighbors and friends, and those who stand to lose their health insurance. As you can see, we get a lot of traffic on this street, and a number of people have told us how impressed and important this banner is to them.
Breaking from your word, more light, more truth. Holy Spirit, help us hear what needs to be heard. More light, more truth.
it's not. It's a long walk around here. She wouldn't walk? Y'all ready? We get by with things. You ready? And we're back. Yeah. Well, I want to hear that again. Who was that? Who gave a shout out? Was that Hawaii? Let's hear it from Hawaii back there. Who's given me some macadamia nuts? Thank you. And some beautiful lei beads. Thank you for that too, Hawaii. Your amazing conference. All right. Did everybody get something good to eat? Yeah? Okay. So, I would like to call to order the 6th plenary of the 31st General Synod. We will begin this evening with another speak out, but before we begin, I'd like to draw your attention to the screens in the hall for a word from another one of our sponsors, this time from the pension boards.
What does operating from the intersection of faith and finance look like? Faith and finance is a core principle of the pension board's mission that is expressed in every area of our work. It's what differentiates us. Faith and finance intersects in benefit plans and services, sustainable investment, and programs that strengthen ministry. That's how the pension boards operates at the intersection of faith and finance.
Thank you, pension boards, for your generous support of the General Synod. We are truly grateful. So now, friends, we begin our next series of speak outs. So I'll now recognize the speaker at microphone number 5.
My name is Marilyn Kendricks, and I'm the interim pastor at the Congregational Church of Naugatuck, part of the Connecticut Conference. I am blessed by my church to be able to visit other UCC churches once a month to preach a sermon that raises awareness about mass incarceration and to lead to a second-hour discussion on the topic. I've preached at 64 churches so far, the goal to preach at all of them. In addition, I partnered with 7 other writers to write a book about the criminal justice system focused on Connecticut and offer 30 recommendations on what needs to happen in terms of repealing bad laws and getting new laws passed that will, if implemented, result in cutting incarceration in half in 5 years. The book is entitled The Justice Imperative, How Hyper-Incarceration Hijacked the American Dream. Our efforts at the Connecticut General Assembly, where we gave copies of the books to every legislator, have resulted in the Second Chance Act and bail reform. Tell me about your interest in this if you'd like to join me.
Thank you so much. Recognizing now the group standing at microphone 5.
Hi, I'm Brody Hoover, and I'm with the South Dakota Conference.
I'm Dylan Kitchen, a delegate of the Nebraska Conference.
And I'm Reverend Dixie Laube from the Iowa Conference. In the heartland of the country, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa, a search committee is finishing work on a conference minister search, unlike any before in the UCC. When this candidate is called and begins work on January 1st, 2018, for the first time, 3 UCC conferences will be served by one staff headed by one executive conference minister. Is this creative approach to staffing the answer to all that ails us in the middle setting of the church? Of course not. But here is a striking fact. In 1/3 of our conferences, there is one and only one professional staff person. This is not a healthy way for this important and sometimes difficult work to be done. Speak to someone from South Dakota, Nebraska, or Iowa to learn more about our emerging exercise in cooperative conference ministry.
Thank you all. Recognizing the speaker at microphone 5.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. My name is Emma Ritchie. I'm from my squad.
You have
Sorry,
a
I'm from the Pacific Northwest Conference, and I know that you all really like to clap and cheer when young people speak, but I'm going to ask you to hold that until I'm done because I have a lot to say. Thank you. Okay, all right. I was elected to be the youth delegate for the Pacific Northwest Conference for this year's synod. I flew approximately 7 hours to get here to Baltimore. Our conference is comprised of Washington State, Northern Idaho, and Alaska, and I'm here representing the young UCC people in those states. I came here really excited to meet with other young delegates, youth and young adults, and there has not been a plan so far for us delegates to meet up and coordinate in this way. This is not an attempt to slam the city planning committee in any way, or any of the wonderful people working with the youth, shout out PB. And I recognize the intended position of youth delegates is to infuse into the traditionally adult-dominated national youth setting of the UCC and to let us have a voice.
Thank you. Recognizing the delegate at microphone 5.
Hi, my name is Becky Hoover. I'm a pastor in the Pennsylvania Southeast Conference, a product of the Central Atlantic Conference. I'm also a child care volunteer and a parent of a child in the Older Kids program. This shout out is to thank Libby Foos and Portia Harris, the co-coordinators of children's programming for this synod. It's been a huge job organizing the volunteers, being here every day, all day, putting tons of time, energy, and passion into creating a safe, fun, and awesome experience for our children. I am especially appreciative of the programming they've done for the older kids who have been learning what it means to be the church and the United Church of Christ here and throughout the world. Now, unless you're a responsible adult for a kid here at Synod or you're a child care volunteer, you can't cross the blue drapes. But I would invite you to join me in making an intentional point to thank Portia Harris and Libby Foos for all of their hard work and helping us to embody the great love of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone 5.
My name is Ernie Potter. I'm a member of the Zion United Church of Christ at Gilman, Illinois, and an Illinois delegate, and I'm also a CPA. Last night on the program, we had a subject matter called Budget Presentation and Vote. I just want to tell you that there was no budget presentation. There needs to be some type of clarification done. What we voted on last year really was, or last night, really was the fact that we spoke about what it was that we were going to have on spending limits and not on how we were going to spend it. We need to, also we were asked to make a commitment to raise money and to put a ceiling limit on the amount that the Cleveland office was going to spend, $4,900,000 for 2018 and $4,630,000 for 2019. Budget indicates the dollars with guidelines for income and expenses. Let's not call what is presented to us as a vote on a budget, but delegates need to know what it is they're voting.
Thank you. Recognizing the delegate at microphone 5.
Good evening. My name is Laverne Joseph. I'm clergy in the Southern California Nevada Conference and the president and CEO of Retirement Housing Foundation based in Long Beach. But we're a national company with 191 communities in 29 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, serving almost 22,000 older adults, persons with disabilities, and low-income families. In 2012, the Department of Housing and Urban Development took a one-year hiatus in new construction grants for HUD 202 housing, which serves older adults. That one-year hiatus continues today with no new construction grants. When asked about it, a HUD employee said, "Where is the outcry?" We're trying to respond to that question. On Tuesday, we had 1,100 people at the Capitol in a rally to restore and keep strong the HUD 202 program. We invite you to join the Senior Action Network and write letters 4 times a year. You can find out about it at the RHF website, www.rhf.org. Let's provide that outcry.
Thank you. Recognizing the delegate at microphone 5.
Good evening. My name is Jasmine Coleman Quinterly, and I am clergy in the South Central Conference. And I stand to invite the women of the Southern region to come to a women's retreat October 20th through the 21st, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Moe Ranch in beautiful hill country of Texas. We are excited about giving women a chance to refresh, renew, and revitalize their lives. This is for lay people and clergy, and we'd like for you to come and see all of the missions and the ministries that are going on in the South Central Conference, and to show us what you are doing in your region. We look forward to being the host with the most in the South Central Conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone 5.
Hello, my name is Grace Hetrick, and I'm from the Penn Southeast Conference. On behalf of the youth, we would like to thank Reverend Dr. Barbara Daniels for coordinating the youth at Synod this year. She has helped to integrate the youth and their adult chaperones into the business of Synod. Throughout the weekend, she has taught us how to incorporate faith into our daily lives, raised issues of justice, and showed us leadership opportunities. Pastor Daniel has worked tirelessly to give the youth an enjoyable and informative experience, and most importantly, our voice. We would also like to thank our own Reverend John Folk for helping to lead the youth at Synod. Finally, we would like to thank all of the volunteers and adult chaperones for this support throughout the program.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone 5.
My name is Jeanette Brown. I'm from Christ Church Summit, New Jersey, from the New Jersey Association and Central Atlantic Conference. I came to this meeting by Amtrak. This service is currently out of the proposed budget. Some people can only travel by Amtrak for health reasons or because of religious reasons. I'm talking about the Mennonites. Please call your congressmen and senators and ask them to change the budget and keep the railroad passengers in mind. This poster is from the National Association of Railroad Passengers. You can download this and bring it to your church and have them call too. We have to keep the trains running. There are many Amtrak employees that I know personally, and they're all asking us to keep the trains running. Otherwise, those in the central, see the black, they will have no trains or no other options. So please keep the trains running. I am a member of the National Association of Railroad Passengers. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our speakouts for the evening. Our next speakout session will be tomorrow morning during plenary. The sign up for that speakout will be immediately following this plenary. Please see Ken Daniel to sign up. He'll be back there at the parliamentarian's desk. So, to open this evening's, we have an opening reflection with Raven Rowe.
Thank you. Okay, so brace yourself. Most of you are sitting down, which might be a good thing. I was invited to be a theological reflector, and so we're going to do a little bit of theology and a little bit of reflecting. So this is my invitation of extravagant welcome to all of you to consider my favorite kind of theology, queer theology. So, someone asked me just a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, just a little bit, because I only got 2 minutes. So, why queer theology? Queer theology teaches us that there is so much power in the way in which we name and claim ourselves. There is power in the way we identify ourselves and the words that we use to identify ourselves. I like to joke all the time. My wife identifies as a lesbian, but I like to call myself queer. Now, some of the youth that I serve in my setting, whether in the church or in the hospital, I have many youth come to me and they say, but you're married to a woman, you must be a lesbian. Again, queer theology, there's definitely power in the way in which we name and claim ourselves. If you notice my swag this evening, there are so many buttons in the exhibit hall. And believe it or not, there's power in buttons, because when I wear these and I encounter people, not just here in Synod, but out in the streets, this is a form of advocacy because it is a form of conversation starters. Ask me about my pronouns. Don't assume, right? If I name myself in a particular way, then I invite you to listen to my words. When the youth come forward, as they are about to come forward again today, when they identify themselves as relevant, resist calling them the future. When people stand up at the microphone and they identify themselves as Black, resist calling them African Americans. If I stand up here and I call myself queer, resist calling me a lesbian. So I invite us, in the spirit of queer theology, let's listen to the ways in which we name and claim ourselves today. Blessings.
Thank you, Raven. So, are you ready to dig in again? I didn't hear you. There you go. Here we go. Dinner's kicking in, huh? Get those calories moving. All right. So we are returning, if you remember, we are now returning to the business that we had to suspend earlier in the day. We were working on number 11, which was, with Aaron Roberts, the affirming and supporting the authorized ministry of underrepresented clergy in local congregations, a call for greater representation and economic justice. And we suspended just as we were going to take an amendment for microphone number 6. So I recognize the speaker at microphone 6.
Good evening, Madam Moderator, delegates, and visitors. My name is Rich Rodner. I'm a delegate from the Maine Conference, and I would like to offer an amendment. The sound is terrible. On lines 20, 41, and 79, I move that we insert age after ethnicity.
Do we have a second to that motion?
My name is Dylan Provencher, and I am a delegate for the Maine Conference, and I second.
Thank you. So we have an amendment on the floor, adding the word age on lines 20, 41, and 79. I'll entertain any conversation, any discussion about this amendment. Seeing no one rising to move to a microphone. Are you ready for that question? All in favor, of course, are going to, of this motion, of this amendment, are going to vote 1. All opposed, vote 2. All abstaining, vote 3. And the voting is open now. So the motion has carried. We will add age to those 3 different spots. And now we return to the original motion on the floor with 2 amendments, as you recall. So now we're back to the original motion, not emotion, affirming and supporting authorized ministries of underrepresented clergy in local congregations. Is there any further discussion on this before we go to vote? Do we have a speaker at microphone number 1? Recognizing the speaker at microphone 1.
Bill Worley, Conference Minister, Pennsylvania Southeast Conference. I caused a bit of a stir during the hearing on the resolution regarding the provisional use of the revisioned Manual on Ministry by uttering the phrase, tyranny of local church autonomy. There is a source of deep injustice in our beloved covenantal system. That is, we hold one covenantal partner, authorized pastors, to a standard of accountability while not holding local churches to any standard of accountability. The vision of this resolution, which I and our staff attempt to live into every day, will not be realized until there is a manual on church that outlines the gospel-driven principles and UCC practices for a faithfully inclusive church life. If we are serious about accomplishing the goals of this resolution, and I hope we are, we will need to face into the resistance that perpetrates inequality and seriously consider visioning, writing, and authorizing such a manual and revision.
Thank you. Seeing no other rising for discussion, are you ready for the question? All right, so let's get your clickers out. Voting 1 on this resolution would affirm and support this resolution. Voting 2 opposes. Voting 3 abstains. Voting is open now. This passes as a prudential resolution. We needed 50%. We have 93. So the resolution passes. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron and committee. We're now going to move into another piece of business. Piece of business we're going to be working with now is the second piece of business that Committee 14 took on for us. This is on recognizing and studying gun violence as a public health emergency. It is a resolution of witness. It will require a 2/3 vote when we go to vote. I now call on before I do that, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you one other piece of information. This is one of the other resolutions that the youth of at Synod have been focusing on. And once again, as we did yesterday, without objection, I would ask that we suspend our standing rule to allow the body to hear a short presentation from our youth as we prepare to debate and take action upon this resolution. So, hearing no objections, I would invite the youth at Synod to speak from microphone 5 at the time that I ask you to, and to share with us your thoughts. But before that, we will now hear from our committee chair.
Good evening, General Synod. I'm Marilyn Kendricks, interim pastor at the Congregational Church of Naugatuck from the Connecticut Conference. The work of Committee 14 was spirit-filled as we addressed a particular focus of an issue that many of us thought we understood going in. And so it was extremely helpful to have an expert in the room to help us grasp the connection between research, how it is funded, and gun violence. That understanding led to essentially 3 changes that you will notice in the text. The first change that was added by the committee on lines 10 through 12 provided some clear understanding of what the words gun deaths mean. With the help of our expert, we came to understand that the gun deaths that the resolution is addressing includes not only homicides, but also suicides and unintentional shootings. We opted for the wording unintentional shootings to be in alignment with how such deaths are characterized by people doing research in the field, and also to avoid the phrase accidental deaths being understood as acts of God. The second change included more up-to-date statistics on the estimated number of gun-violent deaths in 2016 from the original document, which stated the number as 15,000, to the more current estimate of 35,000 deaths last year. We also changed the word expected to estimated to more clearly indicate that we understood that we can no longer expect any additional gun deaths to occur in the year 2016. Instead, we hope to indicate that the number is still an estimate only because all of the data is not in yet. And to be clear about that, we added a footnote which states data for 2016 not yet available. The final change to the wording of the resolution is in the next paragraph on lines 16 and 17, encouraging the allocation of federal funding not only to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, but also to the National Institutes of Health. We learned that the CDC is an organization that is highly susceptible to political pressure and tends to avoid what might be controversial issues in order to safeguard its federal funding for so many other public health areas that it faces, things like Zika and HIV and other infectious diseases. It was for this reason that we added a call for funding to the National Institutes for Health, which is not nearly so reactive to pressure brought by outside organizations. These are the only changes that were made to the original text of our resolution, and using a consensus model throughout, we were able to quickly judge how the group was feeling about any particular change. I'd like to thank the focused work of my committee that worked well throughout the deliberations, graciously listening to one another, even while disagreeing. I was particularly struck by the committee members' willingness to change a word or phrase when new information was presented. At the end of our deliberations, we used the consensus model to determine the collective will of the group, and with their unanimous approval and on behalf of Committee 14, I move that the 31st General Synod adopts the resolution on recognizing and studying gun violence as a public health emergency.
Thank you. This business is now before the Synod floor. Would the committee chair like to speak further to the motion?
I would. That gun violence is a problem that is growing in our nation is self-evident to anyone who watches the news. Those in this room from cities like Chicago and Baltimore were able to attest to the emotional numbing that takes place when people use guns to kill other people in such numbers. We also learned that the contagion of gun violence spreads from victim to victim in a pattern that is similar to the spread of an infectious disease. While many of us are aware that the criminal justice system has responses to gun violence in most of our cities, we are, many of us, unaware that another angle to address this crisis in our nation is from the public health angle. Considering the increasing numbers of people killed by guns, either homicide, suicide, or unintentional shootings, using the word emergency is altogether appropriate. This is an emergency, and one where we need to bring to bear every tool we have to stem the tide of this plague on God's people. But the tool that has been stymied in the public health is the public health tool, due to the lack of any funding for research on gun violence. Research on gun safety, training in the use of guns or methods of storage. This lack of funding has occurred as a result of strong lobbying efforts in Congress, which has prevented any such research over the last 20 years. The committee discussed the use of the word emergency in the title of the resolution, and it was decided to proactively retain this descriptor because the numbers of people dying in our nation as a result of the lack of some common sense steps that research could provide is unconscionable. While we included the estimated number of gun deaths in the U.S. last year in the resolution to try to help emphasize the magnitude of the problem, I sometimes think that we become desensitized to these big numbers like 35,000 people. I think it helps me to better understand the toll that death by guns has on our society by stating a smaller number. A number like the fact that 7 children or teenagers die every day in our nation as a result of being shot by a gun. It is for these reasons that I urge you to vote yes on this resolution, We need to know all we can know about gun violence if we hope to begin saving lives.
Thank you so much for your work on this. So now we will go to our youth standing at microphone 5. Please.
Hi, I'm Abby Martinage from the Central Atlantic Conference.
I'm Reed Young from the Massachusetts Conference.
Hannah Eastman, Central Atlantic Conference.
I'm Nora Duncan from the Ohio Conference.
Trevor Weekly, Central Atlantic Conference.
Kevin Leichman, Southern Conference. On behalf of the Youth Corps of the 31st General Synod, we would like to address the delegations on the topic and the resolution regarding the right of the CDC to study gun violence as a public health crisis.
The youth did not have full consensus over whether or not gun violence should be regarded and studied as a public health crisis. However, regardless of how we feel about this issue, gun violence impacts our lives as teens in a variety of ways.
Because school shootings are such a threat in daily life, my school in Cleveland Heights, Ohio has implemented a training program called ALICE, which teaches students and teachers how to counter an active shooter attack. This involves police officers coming to our school and shooting at us with blanks while we practice building barricades, countering their attacks, and leaving the building, in an effort to make sure we are prepared for an active shooter event. It's a very scary ordeal, but it helps us feel more prepared for the very prevalent threat of school shootings in our society.
Usually when I came home from school in 5th grade, I would get home to my dad watching WJZ, and I would fight with him all the time about going to watch The Fairly Odd Parents. On December 14th, 2012, I arrived home to The Fairly Odd Parents already on, and my dad red-faced with the most solemn expression I'd seen him wear. Hours later, I found out about the Sandy Hook school shooting.
In my freshman year of high school in Massachusetts, a girl who was mentally unstable claimed on a social media network that she was going to pull a Columbine at our school. With the grace of God, another classmate reported it. The police arrested her to find 4 semi-automatic rifles in her home. She is now in a juvenile detention building. This incident left the school feeling traumatized, lonely, and forgotten.
In scientific studies, researchers will manipulate the independent variable in order to determine which conditions produce the best results. In order to determine which gun safety regulations would be most beneficial to our society, it is crucial to study gun violence as the public health crisis that it clearly is. The youth voted to focus on this resolution because this is an issue that, like it or not, impacts our daily lives. Regardless of whether or not you support stronger gun control regulations, we hope that you support the passage of this resolution, because the only way we can improve our world is by educating ourselves on the causes of the issues that plague our society. Thank you.
Can I get a witness? Let's give these young people who have witnessed to us so amazingly the accolade they deserve. We've been to church right now, haven't we? I'd like to recognize the speakers at microphone 5.
My name is Cassandra Granados from the New York Conference. When I first saw the picture of the persons of color, and I heard that we were going to be talking about guns, I saw a stereotype that was being reinforced, and I went and I talked to my conference minister, and I talked to the persons of color that are a part of our delegation, and I said, this really bothers me. Does this bother you? And it did, and so we went to Libby, and
I'm Gary Gossel, also from the New York Conference. I also served on Committee 14. I do want to say thank you very much to Marilyn Kendricks for all of the work that you did. But truly, I believe that at least our conference really lost what was happening as we saw the graphic behind you. which you probably did not see. And I truly believe that however that happened, there truly needs to be an apology. It was offensive to all of us because it is, whether intentional, unintentional, it still is something that should never have happened, and just a symbol of the racism that exists that we need to work at fighting among ourselves. And it truly saddens me because it was a very rewarding experience with you and our committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll respond on behalf of the technological people who are behind this screen. I also did not see the graphic, but I understand we are rolling a roll of pictures in and out. I can only say I'm sure that there was no intentional slight meant in that. But I do appreciate deeply your bringing the pain that caused to some, and on behalf of all of us who are working so hard to put this synod together, I will apologize. Thank you. All right, so we've heard from our youth. Let us start now with our discussion. Turning to microphone 1.
I'm David King. I'm a deacon in the Congregational Church of Harvard in Harvard, Massachusetts, registrar of the Central Association, and honored and humbled to be a first-time delegate from the Massachusetts Conference. Full disclosure, I'm a soldier who has carried and used guns on behalf of my country, and I am a life member of the NRA. First, let me emphatically state what this resolution is not. It is not a resolution on gun control. Rather, it is a resolution on gun violence. More specifically, it is a resolution on the studying of gun violence. Finally, and most specifically, it is a resolution that calls on our government to provide funds to the appropriate agencies, the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health, to carry out these studies. This resolution, on careful consideration, deserves the unanimous support of this body. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize the speaker at microphone number 5.
Hello, my name is Nathan Hart from the Penn West Conference. Just as a point of clarification, in any ALICE training that I've done as a professional educator, students are never involved in any process that has a live shooter scenario. Students are never a part of that. The only people that are ever a part of that are the police, the trainers, and teachers. Students are never subjected to that because of the trauma it may cause. And I feel that's a very important point of clarification based on what the students, the youth here, were told. Thank you.
Thank you, and we can only assess that this is the experience that they've had. Thank you for that comment. All right, turning now to microphone 3.
Good evening. My name is Paul Fogel with the United Church of Christ Disabilities Ministries. First of all, I do want to say that I'm generally in favor of this resolution. However, when I reviewed the things on the app, I felt the need to come to this microphone to discuss some of the unintentional consequences that this resolution might allay in terms of stigma for people with disabilities and mental health. When people think of research studies and some of the language that is in this resolution, and it was mentioned earlier, talking about taking away or not having quote-unquote crazy people with guns and things of that nature. And as some of you might know, within the past year, there's been efforts to link background checks to Social Security databases for people who use or people who have rep payees. So I wanted to bring that to the body for consideration, and I might make an amendment, but that's another microphone. So thank you.
Thank you. Turning now to speaker at microphone 2.
Mike Riedinger, UCCB delegate and president CEO of this resolution's author, the Council for Health and Human Service Ministries. I speak in favor of this resolution on behalf of Chisholm's board, staff, membership organizations, and personally. Most of our 400 ministries across the country deal directly with the effects of gun violence, both in the communities they serve and with the staff who do that work. By allowing the scientific community to do research on the public health effects of gun violence, we can begin to better understand how to change the tide of devastation caused by the ever-increasing gun violence in our country. It is estimated that 35,000 people in the U.S. died at the hands of guns in 2016. If 35,000 people died of anything else, we would be studying it already. Passing this resolution will lead to the necessary research aiding in the truthful dialogue we must have as a community of faith. Let us, the UCC, be the truth tellers and the prophetic voice towards ending this epidemic. Please support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I return to microphone 1, the speaker at microphone 1.
Hello, my name is Hannah Robinson, and I am a youth delegate for the Michigan Conference. In 1996, an article by Arthur Kelman found that guns in the home were associated with an increased risk of homicide in the home, based off of CDC-funded study findings. In response, the NRA began lobbying Congress to prevent the CDC from researching gun violence. They succeeded when a rider, known as the Dickey Amendment, was passed in 1996. Since then, thousands have died due to gun violence, and the CDC is not even allowed to study why. Even the bill's author, Jay Dickey, has spoken out against the amendment and has called for the amendment's repeal. Compared to 22 other high-income countries, the U.S.'s gun-related murder rate is 25 times higher, with gun-related suicides being 8 times higher. Because of this, I am saying that we need to allow proper authorities to study this issue before we can even start discussing solutions. And this is why I believe you should vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to microphone 6, recognizing that speaker.
Good evening. My name is Ray Jordan from the South Central Conference. We have heard a beautiful witness from our youth. We've heard one speaker who had some issue with this resolution, and we have heard 3 speakers now in favor of. So, Madam Moderator, I call for the question.
The question has been called. We just go immediately to the question. Do we have a second?
Jameson Baxter, Penn Northeast Conference Delegate. I second.
We have a motion and second. We vote on it? All right. So, friends, if you'll raise your clickers. You know the routine? Oh, ha ha, you're so funny. All right, I make a comment that it's late, but I think you all know that already, yes? All right. So, number 1, if you support ending debate and calling the question. Number 2, if you oppose that. Number 3, if you abstain. The voting is opened now. And the motion passes with 86%. So we will now move on to the main motion and take a vote on that. Would you raise your clickers? Let's just play the rest of the night, shall we? All right. So on recognizing and studying gun violence as a public health emergency, of course, 1 means you're supporting this motion, this resolution. 2 means you oppose it. 3 means you abstain, and the voting is open now. As a resolution of witness, we needed 67%, and we've passed this with 97%. Thank you, Committee 14, for double duty, and Ms. Kendricks, particularly to you for your hard work. Thank you. We're very appreciative. All right, we're holding that applause, you know. All right, thank you. You can lift your clickers, but you can't applaud. There you go. You guys are great over there. Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to committee number, oh, and we got bubbles in the back. We're just having a great old party. We're going to move on to committee number 10. Committee number 10, the piece of business is a resolution of witness in support of adult survivors of child abuse and neglect. That was handled by committee number 10, and Chairperson Sarah Frishimori-Hannigan is here to talk with us about it. Please.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Frishimori-Hannigan, delegate of the Indiana-Kentucky Conference, pastor at Zion Troy Avenue, United Church of Christ in Indianapolis. You can find the resolution of witness in support of adult survivors of child abuse and neglect, as recommended by Committee 10 on your Senate app in Senate Business under resolutions as recommended by the Senate committees. Without a doubt, the participants of Committee 10 recognize the historic importance of this resolution and the weight of the call this resolution gives to the church, the body of Christ, to support adult survivors of child abuse and neglect. I commend Committee 10 for the care and compassion that they brought to our work. Apart from grammatical adjustments, there were 3 substantive changes the committee made. First, after listening carefully to the leader of our education intensive, Dr. Nancy Hensler, and being attentive to the background information of this resolution, the committee agreed that the clinical term, adverse childhood experience, be included in the body of the resolution to reflect current research and terminology in the area of childhood development and trauma. You can see this addition in lines 11 through 12 and 29. Second, one of the main concerns of some of the committee was around the issue of for whom this resolution was calling to action. Recognizing that not all churches use the term members, the committee changed the term to one we felt was more expansive and inclusive, participants. You can see this change in lines 19 and 21. The point that took most of our attention was around the idea that while the original resolution called upon each association and congregation of the UCC to educate its members or participants, it did not specifically call upon authorized ministers and other leaders of congregations to educate themselves on how to best offer compassion, support, care, and welcome to adult survivors. The question was whether or not this resolution should remain a broad call for the church, or whether it should include an additional call upon not only authorized ministers, but other church leaders as well, because they are often the ones who provide pastoral care and who can set the tone of welcome, care, and support in their congregations. There were several in our committee who were concerned that authorized ministers often do not receive rigorous enough training in being able to offer this kind of compassionate support and welcome to adult survivors. The caution was also raised that leaders in our churches be mindful of the scope of their call and training and know when it is better to refer to other professionals trained in working with trauma survivors. The biblical, theological, and historical grounding and the proponent who spoke to our resolution voiced the concern that too often adult survivors have entered into the offices of clergy looking for comfort and encouragement and have not found that. The change was then added in lines 17 through 19 that the UCC encourages each association and congregation of the United Church of Christ to have authorized ministers and other leaders of the church understand the importance of the issue this resolution addresses and learn alongside participants of the church. Adult survivors of child abuse and neglect and adverse childhood experiences are among us and need to have their voices heard. On behalf of Committee 10, I move that the 31st General Synod adopts the resolution on a resolution of witness in support of adult survivors of child abuse and neglect and recommend approval as amended by committee.
Thank you very much. So now this piece of business is on the floor of the Synod. Chairperson, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, moderator. The United Church of Christ has long given voice to children who experience child abuse and neglect, standing on the side of loving justice and compassion. However, as the introductory remarks that accompanied this resolution stated, adoption of this resolution will be groundbreaking because for the first time, a national organization in the United States, either secular or religious, will publicly proclaim its solidarity with, acceptance of, and a support for adult survivors of child abuse and neglect. Survivors of child abuse and neglect are all around us, in our families, in our churches, in our communities, and in this gathering. As children grow into adults, the wounds of their childhood do not just go away, and so ongoing care and support is needed. Safe space for healing is needed. These painful childhood experiences not only impact childhood development, shaping one's ability to relate to and trust others, but it also impacts behavior as survivors try to cope with their pain. The physical impact of trauma and stress increases risks for depression, heart disease, cancer, and an overall shortened lifespan. It is time for the church to declare our space safe and welcoming of survivors and embrace them rather than shame them for the ways their childhoods have impacted who they are. This resolution calls for learning, the creation of resources, and public witness. At the heart of this resolution is the need for our churches to be safe and supportive. I give thanks that Committee 10 did the work of holy listening with the spirit of care and support that this resolution calls upon the whole church to embody. I give thanks to Diane Champay, who wrote this resolution and spoke with our committee, that she has given voice to this need as a survivor and an advocate. Our intensive educator gave us this quote from Elie Wiesel: "To remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all." By adopting this resolution, the United Church of Christ will give witness to voices that have too long gone unheard, that have too long been silenced, to the voices of survivors who are not yet ready to disclose or who do not yet feel comfortable with sharing their stories, but nevertheless need compassionate communities and safe spaces. It is for the adult survivors who live every day with the wounds of their childhood that we, as Committee 10, offer our support for the adoption of this resolution and ask that you lend your support as well.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So now we will entertain discussion. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
I'm Allison Best, and I'm with the South Central Conference, and I support this resolution as a psychologist, as a psychologist who's worked with many trauma survivors, as a member of the Mental Health Network, and as someone who has a loved one, several loved ones with severe childhood trauma history. This is very important, and I also want to mention that sometimes survivors of childhood trauma don't even remember their trauma and may unexpectedly be triggered even in church.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 6.
I am Reverend Catherine Alder of Central Pacific Conference. I offer this amendment to Resolution 10. be it further resolved that the church be given materials and training to support adult survivor participants of the church who come forward with clergy or lay leader abuse due to this special betrayal of trust in our own church family. And I'd like to speak to it.
All right, do we have a second?
I'm Diane Doolin from the Central Pacific Conference, and I second this amendment.
Thank you. Yes, please speak.
Thank you. When we raise abuse and neglect in the church, clergy or lay leader abuse may surface from those whom have experienced it. The abuse is unique to the church as a betrayal in the church family. Preparation is needed to respond to these particular survivors. Where do they go for support to work through the effects on their faith, their sense of brokenness in church community, and connection to the church? As a therapist, I have often listened to so many survivors. Many are in their 40s who finally feel strong enough to tell their stories. We need preparation to hear the unique survivor story from church abuse, to not dismiss or put it under the rug, their experiences. This is church family abuse. Not in our family? Yes, sometimes in our family. Please vote yes on the amendment to help us be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have an amendment on the floor. Do I have discussion related to the amendment? I recognize the speaker at microphone 1. Is this related to the amendment?
I think it will relate to it, yes, ma'am.
All right, please.
My name is Lisa Griffith Tierney from the Iowa Conference. I also was on the committee that worked on this resolution, and I just wanted to give voice, especially with regard to abuse of the church and the people within it, to those who have experienced or been hurt by their pastors and families around conversion therapies. Those therapies that have been intended to eradicate homosexual identities. This resolution addresses adverse childhood experiences as defined by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And that organization also acknowledges the developmental detriment that these therapies do to children that will carry on into their adult life. So I encourage everyone to support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone number 4.
Good evening. I'm Bill McCarthy from Illinois Conference. While I recognize the sensitivity and the importance of the subject matter of the amendment, and I, in my long church career, have seen it happen in more than one congregation, and I am sympathetic to it. I believe instead that this subject of potential clergy abuse and supporting survivors of clergy abuse is an entirely different subject and ought to be the proper subject of its very own resolution at the next opportunity, which could be our next synod. The resolution that is on the floor is a broad resolution that has been vetted and has its own body of practical and liturgical and broad support, and is also within my personal experience, and it deserves its own support, in my opinion. Therefore, I argue against the amendment.
Thank you. Any other speakers rising to speak to the amendment? Recognizing the speaker at microphone 4.
Hi, Halcourt Penning with the Rocky Mountain Conference. There are some issues that one encounters in pastoral care that ought not to be dealt with by a pastor, but rather should be dealt with by a licensed therapist or a psychologist. If you ever, my dear colleagues, ever encounter somebody who has been the victim of clergy abuse, please don't try to handle this on your own. And there is no resource that our denomination can put together in a pamphlet or a video that's going to enable you to have the years of experience that those who specialize in trauma do have to help victims. So I urge you to vote no on this amendment.
Thank you. Speaker, recognizing the speaker at microphone number 1, is this related to the amendment?
It is.
All right, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Reverend Jacob Stewart. I'm from the New York Conference. And like many of you probably sitting here, I did not grow up in the UCC. I grew up in a fundamentalist tradition that practiced conversion therapy and that perpetrated a lot of church-based and clergy abuse. And I believe that in the UCC, that with our open and affirming churches, with our freedom of thought, our non-creedal tradition, that we are particularly a haven for people who have suffered at the hands of more regressive and abusive church and community contexts. And so while I agree with the speaker that we will never be equipped to handle trauma, we are often the gatekeepers. And people often come to our congregation, and I believe that we must be equipped as clergy and lay leaders to have the information and the resources to refer people to the services and support that they need. And so I rise in support of this amendment.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone number 4.
Hi, I'm Rachel Oliver, youth delegate of Rocky Mountain Conference. And I told myself I wasn't going to do this since I served on Committee 10, but I have to go against the amendment because I feel like there's two main things. It's already partially mentioned in the resolution where it says, like, we'll be creating and disseminating a study guide, which is the materials. Also, I think that it's going away from what the resolution calls us to do. It calls us to set up a safe and trustworthy environment, not necessarily like my friend Hal said, where you can be able to treat or take care necessarily of the victim. It's just building trust and a comfortable and safe home for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone number 2, is this related to the amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm Reverend Micah Royal from the Southern Conference, and I just wanted to speak to the importance of incorporating as a unique topic spiritual abuse. It was already mentioned about conversion therapy. When I worked in my chaplain training at a domestic violence shelter, I could give you stories of women and children that were abused where the church justified that, and it made it difficult for them to have help. It is important that we need to also refer people to clinicians, but proper training of churches, clergy, and resources will encourage this, not discourage this. So saying that including resources and training will discourage people from getting clinical help is actually a non-issue. If it's appropriate resources that are provided, it will encourage that. So I'm kind of voicing my support for having specific training about spiritual abuse and abuse by the church.
Thank you. I'm going to call one last person at microphone 1, and then I'm going to check the temperament of the House for their readiness to vote on this amendment. So recognizing the speaker at microphone 1.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Lori Keller Schrader from the Indiana-Kentucky Conference, and I rise in support of this amendment, not as my role as a clergy person, but as my identity as a child, as my father's heathen child. Spiritual abuse of children is a sin. It needs to be called that, and I would have loved, as I was growing up and becoming an adult, for someone to take that pain seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. So, floor, are we ready to speak to the amendment? Yes? I'm sorry? You ready to vote? Yes? So, our amendment is presented on the screen for you. A vote for number 1 is supporting this amendment. Number 2 is opposing the amendment. Number 3 is abstaining. So let us now vote. We're not even on that. All right. We needed simple majority to pass. This motion has not passed, so the amendment did not pass. So we return now to the original piece of business on the floor without amendment. We have some additional speakers ready to speak. I'll recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Thank you. I'm Nathaniel Malberg in the Pacific Northwest Conference. I serve as the pastor of First Congregational Church in Walla Walla, Washington, and I have been serving in ordained ministry for less than 2 years, and I am already impressed with the importance of this resolution. It is basically a weekly theme in my pastoral care for congregants. The experience of having been abused as a child or as an adult. And I am very grateful that it just so happens in my seminary training and in my chaplaincy residency with a trauma team in a hospital that I've received good training in how to provide pastoral care for folks who have experienced trauma of various sorts. And also am aware of how to refer folks to mental health professionals. But so I just want to underscore the importance of this resolution. It's so often not spoken about. So thank you.
Thank you. Turning to the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, I'm Brody Hoover, and I'm a youth delegate for the South Dakota Conference. As a survivor of child abuse, I am here to say that the blame is often placed on the victims and not the perpetrators. I believe that this motion should be passed because it is not often that victims and survivors of child abuse are told it is not their fault. Please vote this yes.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone number 6.
Hello, my name is John Loff of the Iowa Conference, and I'd like to propose an amendment to this resolution. The amendment would read, changing the words of survivor abuse in lines 11, 20, and 39 to persons living in the aftermath of abuse.
All right, can I get clarification on that? So thank you. To change the words of survivor abuse.
Anywhere that says survivor abuse to persons living in the aftermath of abuse. We're using this to break down the binary language of this resolution.
So right now it reads, line 11 reads, healing needs of adult survivors of child abuse. So you would want that to read healing needs of persons living in the aftermath of abuse?
Correct.
All right. Do we have a second?
Dixie Laube, Iowa Conference, and I second this.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to your amendment?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we have the amendment on the floor, and I'm recognizing the speaker at microphone 5.
Hi, John Zangari, Penn Northeast Conference. Based on this amendment and the title of the actual resolution, if this amendment were to go through, I'm asking for a point of clarification. If this amendment were to go through, would the title of the resolution have to change? Because the title of the resolution has survivor in the name. So essentially we're taking survivor completely out of the resolution and essentially changing the resolution as a whole, just the titling of it. I'm just asking for clarification on that.
It's a very good point. I don't know. Change the title? The amendment would be making the change in the body of the text, not in the title itself. Recognizing the speaker at microphone 4, this is related to the amendment.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm Brody Hoover from the South Dakota Conference, and being able to call ourselves survivors is important to us. Whether people think that we should or not, it's important to what we hear in ourselves.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone 1.
Desiree Gold, Minnesota Conference. I'm speaking in favor of the amendment because sometimes it takes a very, very long time, sometimes well into adulthood, before somebody becomes a survivor. They may be a victim or somewhere on that spectrum. I believe the person who presented the amendment talked about a spectrum between being a victim to a survivor, and therefore I speak for this amendment.
Thank you. Recognizing the speaker at microphone number 3.
Hi, Reverend Julie Bell at Trinity UCC, Palmyra, Pennsylvania. And this is a very excellent idea from someone, not me. So I wanted to share with you something she pointed out. And I will say that the young woman who's a survivor of sexual abuse, you have many friends in this room who know the journey. Thank you. Please, by all means, those who are living, this is my friend's most excellent idea, those who are living in the aftermath of abuse, I believe that's the wording for the agenda, the amendment, isn't that right?
Yes.
Could be the perpetrator. And I really don't think we should be trying to support the perpetrator. There are programs that do that, but I would like us to be supporting the survivor. Thank you.
Thank you. Has the floor heard what they need to hear to vote on the amendment? So if you will now raise your clickers. And number 1, of course, is in support of this amendment to change the word survivor abuse to persons living in the aftermath of abuse. Number 2 is to oppose this amendment. And number 3 is to abstain. Please vote now. The amendment needed a 50% yes vote. It did not receive that, so the amendment has not passed. And we return to the original motion on the floor. Calling on microphone number 1.
Hi, I'm Koli Bativia, a pastor from the Wisconsin Conference. And I just wanted to speak briefly in support to say that there are already a number of good resources out there to have this conversation in your churches. Several months ago, some of our local public school teachers came to us and said, we heard this amazing presentation at the school with all the teachers, and we want to bring it to the church. And it was a presentation on ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences that are mentioned in the resolution. So we brought in a local facilitator and invited folks from our church. We billed it as anybody who's interested in our children, anybody who cares about children should care about this. And just so many members of our church were interested in learning more about this. So I support this resolution and encourage you to look into the resources that are out there.
Thank you. Turning to microphone number 6.
Hello, Gabriel McKelvey, Wisconsin Conference. Seeing as how there's been almost or maybe entirely just support for this and lots of discussion, I think we should call the question.
All right, thank you. The question has been called. Do I have a second?
Kevin Mundell, Wisconsin Conference, I second.
We have a second. So let us vote now to end discussion and move to calling the question. Vote 1 if you favor ending discussion and calling the question, 2 if you oppose, 3 if you abstain. Voting starts now. The motion to call the question has been carried. So now we move directly on to the voting on the resolution of witness in support of adult survivors of child abuse and neglect. Again, number 1 means you favor this resolution. Number 2 means you oppose. And number 3, you abstain. Please go ahead and vote. And the motion passes, the resolution passes. Committee 10 and Ms. Frische-Mori-Heinigen, thank you so much for your hard work on this. We are very grateful. I think we need a little energy in the house. If you'll stand on your feet and see if you can sing this one with me. I think you can. First of all, you need to put your index finger up in the air. Who knows which one this is? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Sing it out. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Hey, you guys are amazing. You got lights, you got whatever those are. You guys are wonderful. Please have a seat. As we now near the end of our time before worship this evening, let us bring back to the stage our General Minister and President, John Dorhauer, with a word of wonderful denomination-wide mission. John?
Good evening, everybody. Over the last few years, the United Church of Christ is engaged in a variety of mission initiatives. When Mission 1 launched, we worked to end world hunger. When Mission 4-1 Earth was birthed, we did what we could collectively to save the planet. In each instance, we worked together to change the world for the better. Today, we call the United Church of Christ to a new shared mission, 3 Great Loves. 3 Great Loves will seek to engage the entire denomination in a calling to commit fully to living into our missional directive to seek justice for all. 3 Great Loves will invite the entire United Church of Christ to pull together and create deep and lasting impact. 3 Great Loves will span the biennium between this gathering in Baltimore and our coming together in Milwaukee, Wisconsin 2 years from now, at which time we will give a full report of the impact that we will have created together. We will be able to tell the story of how the United Church of Christ is working to build a just world for all. What is 3 Great Loves? It is a call to the love of children, to the love of neighbor, and to the love of creation. During the next biennium, we want to discover what an entire denomination committed to three great loves can do to change the world. During the next biennium, we want your setting for ministry to explore new ways to embody commitments to care for the child, the neighbor, and the earth. During the next biennium, there will be three significant requests of you, three occasions in which we invite us all to participate in one collective effort. Each of the three great loves will have a dedicated call to action with three components: an invitation to give, an invitation to act, and an invitation to connect. In the winter of 2017, we will do a denomination-wide drive to provide basic human needs items to shelters housing refugees or the homeless. In the fall of 2018, we will do a denomination-wide school supplies drive to address inequalities in our education systems. And in 2019, right before General Synod, we will do a sponsored 5K walk to raise money and awareness for the earth. Throughout the 2 years, we will be collecting stories of your church's commitments to the love of children, the love of neighbor, and the love of creation. Our hope is to be able to document 50% congregational participation by Synod 2019, to collect 3,000 stories from across the denomination about how we are building a just world for all through love of children, love of neighbor, and love of creation, to collect 100 stories from other covenant partners like our Chisholm agencies, and we want to name 300 three great love heroes, asking you to nominate somebody who is working to care for children, for neighbor, and for creation. Share with us the stories of love that you commit to and the impact that they created. We know that the congregations of the United Church of Christ are already fully engaged in a mission that matters. We know that congregations in the United Church of Christ demonstrate a remarkable love for God's children, for the neighbors in our midst, and for God's creation. What the Three Great Loves campaign asks of us is that we sharpen our awareness of a denomination unified in purpose and commitment, and to practice the art of narrating the collective impact of our missional undertaking. Before you leave Synod, please visit the exhibit UCC Innovates Through the Lens of Three Great Loves, to sign up to be a part of the Three Great Loves online community, to leave a story of impact, and to see how our church is already actively working to create a just world for all. We are a united church, united in spirit, united in a spirit of openness to all, no matter who they are or where they are on life's journey, united in a common cause to spread the love of Jesus to all the ends of the earth, united in a mission to love all, to welcome all, to seek justice for all, united in a call to embody love and build a just world for all. Three Great Loves is an invitation to act as one and to deepen our impact by pulling together in love, for justice, and with purpose. As disciples of the risen Christ, we call ourselves to embody love and incarnate justice. Please join us over the next 2 years as we focus with clear intent and shared purpose, as we unite in a call to love children, love neighbor, and love creation. Please join us in an effort to tell the world the stories of our great love and the impact and the difference that they make. Hey, United Church of Christ, the Holy Spirit is relying on you and envisions a future in which you matter. Thank you.
Can I get an amen? As we close this evening's time together, I invite Raven to offer this evening's closing reflection.
Good evening, church. How about a little Jesus? Jesus from the Gospel of John, chapter 9. As he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." And then Jesus, after he had said that, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes. I'm the kind of theologian, preacher, teacher, chaplain. I like to go straight in to the mess. Tracy knew that Christ the King was her church. I knew that the resolution on trauma was my resolution. I myself am a person with trauma. Time and time again, when I was growing up, I didn't understand if my trauma came because of my parents' sin or because of my sin. Theodicy asks the question, where is God in the midst of human suffering? People with trauma are not to blame for their pain. They're not to blame for their trauma. We as people of the church, I invite us to make space to listen to the truths of adult survivors with trauma, to hear their stories, to listen to their pain, to honor their hope and their truth. I'm so blessed to be in this position, and this resolution about trauma is so important to me. ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, is causing an epidemic in our world. Time and time again, in my role as a chaplain, I get the honor and privilege of speaking with some of the most courageous people I have ever met in my life. People who talk to me about their experiences with suffering, and they ask, where is God in all this? Is God the one who brings this suffering? I have my own theories. As a theologian, I definitely have my own theories. Writing my constructive thesis, I definitely have my own theories. But for people with trauma, it's very important that we come up with our own answers. Where is God in the midst of human suffering? It's a very personal question. Why do bad things happen to good people? Again, a very personal question. In the church, we have the opportunity that when people ask if suffering is the will of God, we need to allow them the space to come to their own answers, rather than people of the church suggesting that suffering is the will of God. That may not be any of you. I love you, beloved church, that may not be any of you. But time and time again, people are hearing these messages that their suffering is sent to them because suffering is salvific. And I'm telling you, it is not. Suffering is not what saves us. We can grow and we can flourish in the aftermath of our trauma. If Jesus taught us anything, is that there is life after trauma. There is always the promise of the resurrection. Thank you for allowing this to be my theological reflection resolution. God bless.
Thank you, Raven. We're appreciative of your thoughts and your sharing. And now, let's welcome back Mr. Lee Foley for your evening announcements. Woo!
I understand that there are a number of people who are celebrating birthdays today or have during General Synod. We can't mention you all by name, but let's do one big collective round of happy birthday. Tom? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear everybody. Happy birthday to you.
Nice.
Congratulations to you all. Tonight after worship, you are invited to a confirmation mixer at the Hilton's first floor lobby bar. Add your ideas and voice to the UCC confirmation conversation. And lastly tonight, 2 more speak outs. The next to the last one will be tomorrow morning. And as always, you can see Ken Daniel back there by microphone number 6. Sue?
Thank you. So now as we end this session, I believe we are going to start worship almost immediately after. So we will be moving that up a little bit to get you out earlier this evening. Yeah. So now as we moved into that time of worship, I will now adjourn this sixth plenary of the 31st General Synod. Our next plenary will begin tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Thank you all for your good spirit.
you're following her?
We gather at the end of this very long day to the cadence of raindrops, joined by icy streams of rushing water, flowing and gushing, building and cascading over stones, bringing life and depth to rolling rivers. From the north to the south, from the east to the west, we share life-giving waters.
Creator God, giver of life, who called the oceans and rivers into being, who parted the Red Sea to liberate your people, who imbued the River Jordan with hopefulness, as your child emerged glistening and filled with your grace. For this we praise you, O Holy One.
Sustainer God, wash away the grit of this day as we settle to your word this evening, and refresh us anew with your spirit.
The powers and the principalities hold sway. They seem to be the only ones who get their day. But we who struggle and strain against the bonds, we know the night is darkest before dawn. Oh, we'll all stand together on the banks of that river where the waters of life flow endless and free. Yes, we'll all stand together on the banks of that river in a world recreated, shining bright as can be. Blessed be the hungry, their hunger shall be fed. Blessed be those thirsting for righteousness instead. Blessed be the mourners, the poor and humble too. Blessed be her children when God makes this world new. Oh, we'll all stand together on the banks of that river where the waters of life flow endless and free. Yes, we'll all stand together on the banks of that river
Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him God had given victory to Aram. Although a mighty warrior, Naaman suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only Naaman were with the prophet who is in Samaria, Elijah would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went to Israel, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments, and many servants. Naaman brought a letter from the ruler of Aram to the ruler of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." The ruler of Israel said, "No! Am I God to give death or life, that I should cure someone of leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me. But Naaman, there is someone else who can help you, the good prophet Elijah." Naaman can't believe the message from Elijah. "Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." What? I thought that this prophet would surely come here and meet me. Then he would stand and call on the name of his God, waving his hand all over me to cure my leprosy. Unbelievable that I came all this way for the muddy Jordan, when I could have stayed and bathed in the clean, clear waters of my rivers in Damascus. But Naaman's servants urged him on. "Sir, if the prophet Elisha had commanded you to do something really difficult, would you not have done it?" "Yes, you would. All he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean and be healed.' Then you can lead again and do what needs to be done."
We're always a little tentative to clap following the reading of Scripture, but I think it's an adequate response to the preaching of the Word. My name is David Vasquez-Levy. I have the pleasure of serving as president of Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California. And on behalf, well, thank you. On behalf of the PSR community as well as our seminaries in the United Church of Christ, I bring you greetings and gratitude for the partnership we have in the preparation of leaders for our church and our society. And I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to reflect together with you at the end of a very long and very meaningful day. Please join me in a word of prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditation in our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our God and our Redeemer. Amen. A stream of immigrants, a wave of unaccompanied minors, a flood of refugees. News headlines about immigration are dominated by metaphors of water, combined with pictures of masses of people crossing borders or overcrowded boats venturing across dangerous waters. These metaphors of water capture the scope of the global movement of people. However, they also do this in a way that is often dehumanizing and panic-inducing. The individual stories of those who are on the move are often lost in these metaphors. And the sense of scope in relation to our capacity to welcome and do what God has called us to do, those who are strangers in our land, is lost in these fear-inducing metaphors, making us feel that we are incapable of handling this stream, this wave, this flood. As people of faith, we have some knowledge about complicated water images. Whenever we dare to move beyond, the Lord said to Noah, there's going to be a floody, floody. And actually pay attention to a story that deals in very complicated ways with the ambivalent power of water. The same river that makes glad the city of God is also the river in which we are called to die and be buried into Christ's death, that we may be raised with Christ to walk in newness of life. We know a thing or two about complicated water images that may be helpful in our lives and in our ministry and in our time. This river we celebrate is not only for holiday picnics by the shore, but one that calls us to get wet and muddy, all of which involves some risk, some movement, some faith. As the saying goes, if you're going to walk on water, you're going to have to get out of the boat. Marvin K. White, a spoken word poet and recent PSR alum, wrote a commentary on tonight's text about Naaman as he and I prepared to share in worship about a year ago. He wrote a poem entitled Beck and Call. Naaman, a river don't have to bend you. A river won't cry for you. A river can only cry to you. Get in the river, Naaman. A river comes and goes as it pleases. Do not think, Naaman, that it's supposed to stand for your foolishness. A river won't stand for it. A river won't stand for nothing. A river is supposed to run, because a river is supposed to make you think about the source, about outpouring and washing away and being cleansed, and one day soon being baptized and making glad the city of God. Get in the river, Naaman. Naaman, a river come from rivers that ran out of Eden rather than being cut there. Moving with it is called swimming. Standing up to a river is called drowning. Get in the river, Naaman. This is the refrain of the servants in the story we heard so beautifully read and portrayed. The servants without whom the story would not happen. That maid who had been taken as a slave as the spoils of conquest, who dares to say to Naaman, there is a place in Israel for healing. The servant of Elisha who has the job to go out and tell him to go dunk in the river and wash. And then Naaman's own servants who come to him and say, if the prophet had asked you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? So why not wash and be clean? Now, Naaman tried to do everything not to get wet. Working from his own position of power as a mighty warrior in favor with his master, Naaman went first to the place of power, to the king, who freaked out. Naaman sought to buy favor, bringing with him a really funny, exaggerated set of assorted things to offer so he could buy his healing. Thousands of shekels of gold, tons of servants, 10 outfits. Whatever. Naaman tried everything not to get wet, but try what he may, the kicker came. Dunk in the Jordan. Are not Pharpar and Abana, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? My daddy's rivers are better than your daddy's rivers. Get in the river, Naaman. Now, don't get me wrong. There is nothing wrong with Pharpar and Abana, the rivers of Damascus. But Naaman's healing was not going to come from there. The rivers that have given us strength, sustenance, and life sometimes are not the places where our healing will come. And we must be willing to wade into a new stream, to ride a new wave, to be cleansed by a new flood. Our own healing will only come when we get in the water. Master, if the prophet had asked you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? Servants were quite bright. Are you afraid? Getting a little wet? I mean, you're a mighty warrior after all. What's the problem with a little river? To get in the river, we must first recognize that it is not our own sources that will heal us, important and valuable as they are. To get in the river, we must overcome our own fears. Fear of this stream, this wave, this flood, which are in large part behind the results of our recent national elections. Because this stream, this wave, this flood is not only happening because of migration, it is also happening because, as you may remember, in the 2010 census, for the first time, over 50% of the children born in this country were children of color. By 2040, the United States will not have a majority, but will be a plurality. This stream, this wave, this flood, it's on its way. Already in California, where we serve, 75% of children under 18 are people of color. We must reframe our understanding of this stream, this wave, this flood, if we long to be healed and whole. And as a people who worship the God whose Spirit brooded over the chaotic waters and brought about life, we've got some sacred texts to help us and our society do a better job of thinking and framing this stream, this wave, this flood. Moisés fue el primer mojado, said a participant in a Bible study I was leading. Moses was the first wetback because he crossed the river against the law that divided the poverty and exploitation he experienced of one side from the opportunity and wealth he saw on the other one. Because he, like many of 11 million people in this country and many more irregular immigrants around the world, shared in the conviction of the Syrophoenician woman who, when she was told, it is not right to take the food and give it to the dogs, she came back and said, yes, Lord, but even the dogs have the right to get the crumbs that fall off the master's table. Can we reframe this stream, this wave, this flood as the largest civil disobedience movement in the world's history of people who are putting their bodies on the claim that they too deserve at least the crumbs that fall off the global table we have set for ourselves? We must reframe our understanding and talk about this stream, this wave, this flood, not as a threat, but the river that makes glad the city of God, the holy habitation of God, that will revitalize our church, our communities, and our society. But folks, it won't happen unless we get wet. To do this, we need to get quite a bit more ambivalent about our understanding of water. We need to understand the wealth and well-being and peacefulness that comes from God, but also, as Mr. Beaver said to Susan when introducing her in C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, introducing her for the first time to the lion. Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he is good. This means that we need to celebrate the diversity we have in this hall, that it is such a far cry from when we started 60 years ago. But it means we have to be ready as well to name the fact that progressive Christian movements remains 90% white, in spite of 40 years of committed effort to change that. This 90% reflects the social circles of most white Americans. 90% of the relationships of most white Americans are white. As theologian and comedian Chris Rock put it, all my black friends have white friends, and all my white friends have one black friend. His advice, get yourself some new friends. Get in the river, Naaman. To a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. Now, can you imagine the maid who was cleaning the room of the 5-star general having the courage to point out, oh, you got leprosy, don't you? I got a place that will help you. Can you imagine the courage it takes to speak from the margins into the communities that hold power, wealth, and authority? The courage it takes for a dreamer to claim their right in this world. So we must reframe the way we think about the stream, this wave, this flood, but we must also find ways for the voices of those who call us to get wet and muddy to be heard, to be prepared, to invest in the development of a leadership that at PSR we are calling visionary leadership for the new American mainstream. Because this is not only about what will happen to help serve those underserved communities, but it is about our own well-being and healing. It is about rethinking the story of the lost sheep, in which we abandon the 99 to go look for the one for the sake of the one, but to understand that rather in the context of all of the other stories in chapter 15 of Luke, in which we are reminded that we are going after the one, not for the sake of the one, for the sake of the 99. Because we cannot be whole unless we are together. What is the value of a dowry of 12 coins when one is missing? Of a family where the youngest child is gone? It can only be life-giving and healing unless we are together. So you're aware of the fact that K through 12 education has diversified significantly. As K through 12 education browns, we are defunding it. The last round of this is the proposal to reduce the spending on education by $9.2 billion in Donald Trump's proposal. A similar thing is happening, though, within theological education across all of its systems. As theological education becomes more female and more brown, the resources are not there to educate the new leaders whose voices we need in order to lead in the new American mainstream. For us to be able to get in the water, we must invest in the entire ecosystem of the preparation of leaders for this church and this society. It means that we must be willing to invest in the preparation of leaders who do not look like us, who do not come from our own communities, and who may not come to serve our own communities. And this is a very different understanding of how we invest in the preparation of leaders for our church and our society. On this night, 241 years ago, the Continental Congress was debating, as we have for the last couple of days, the wordsmithing of the final language of what would become the Declaration of Independence. They were penciling in late in the night as we are tonight. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The high ideals of the Constitution were not actually put into practice when the Constitution was created and the United States came into existence. The word man, as you know well, was applied not in a general sense to include women, but rather to only include men, and then only some men. That same document that decried oppression from England referred to Native Americans as the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions, from the people who had perpetrated a near genocide of another people, to call them savages, and to exclude a large portion of the population of African slaves who had been brought into this country and whose labor and life had created the wealth of this nation. We must get more comfortable with the ambivalence of water, with the reality that we have to have the courage to both name the ways in which our sacred texts, our celebration tomorrow of independence, can be full-throated. Because as liberal progressives, we may skew a lot of the celebrations of 4th of July. I want to invite you, along with the network of spiritual progressives, to find a way to celebrate 4th of July that doesn't rely on simply saying, we're all bad, neither are we all good. We need to reclaim all that is good in America, writes the Network for Spiritual Progressives, and reframe that in terms of celebrating July 4th as Interdependence Day. In the 21st century, there is a pressing need to develop a new kind of consciousness, a recognition of the interdependence of everyone on the planet. A new, and this time nonviolent, revolution is necessary. One in which our actions reflect a realization that our well-being depends on the well-being of everyone else on the planet and the planet itself. Church, let's get in the water. Amen.
Dressed in white, the leader looks like the Israelite. See that band all dressed in red. It looks like the band that Moses led. Put your hands together and wave. I went to the water one day to pray. My soul got happy and I stayed all day. Yes, I did. Hey. Come on, wave. Come on, brother, and wave. Stand up, sisters, and wave. You know. Now look over yonder and what do I see? It's the Holy Ghost coming over me. You gotta help the way. You got to help us way. Jordan Street.
Get in the water, Naaman. You must hurry. Be healed, get strong, and lead anew. Mother Earth, La Pachamama, is taking its last breath.
Get in the water, Naaman, or shalom, salam, peace will only be distant echoes. Get in the water, Naaman.
Get in the water, Naaman. La migra está tocando lo puerto y no tengo papeles. Get in the water, Naaman.
Get in the water, Naaman. Our communities and churches are suffering. Our people are dying. Our sisters and brothers need you at their side. Get in the water,
Naaman. Get in the water, Naaman. We need protection and health care and education and love. Get in the water, Naaman.
Get in the water, Naaman. Recognize the gift of being and advocate disability justice for all. Get in the water, Naaman.
Get in the water, Naaman. The first Americans need our lands, our language, our heritage, and our futures.
What, is that already? Is it now? I apologize. I really got into the song, so. Please stand as we receive our benediction. I conclude our time together reading the words often attributed to Monsignor Romero. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. Ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of our future, not our own. Amen. Let us go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Been traveling these wide roads for so long, my heart is far from you. 10,000 miles gone. Oh, I want to be here and give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands and my lips are unclean. In my darkness I remember Mama's words reoccur to me. Surrender to the good Lord, and I'll wipe your slate clean. Take me to your river, I wanna go. Oh, 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 oh. Take me to your river, I wanna go. My heart's been far from you, 10,000 miles gone. Oh, I wanna be here and give you every part of me, but there's blood on my hands and my lips are unclean. Take me to your river, I wanna go. Lord, oh, please let me know. Take me to your river, I wanna go. Oh, 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 oh. Take me to your river, I let me know. Oh, 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 oh. Take me to your river. I wanna go. Wash my sins in the Jordan, in the Jordan. Oh, 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 oh. Take me to your river. I wanna go. Lord, please let me know to your river. I wanna go. Oh, take me to your river.